Stocks trend upward again as we look into more coronavirus market rally here. Minneapolis calls for defunding the police, and so does the rest of the nation. George W. Bush says that he will not vote for Trump no matter what. And Joe Biden wants to flip Texas blue. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. How we doing today, folks? I got a little bit of a short show planned for us today, but looks like we've got plenty of people in the chat already ready to go, ready to hear the news and ready to see what we've got going on here. So this will be the last show in this studio for a week, and then I'll be coming back next week and doing it from here again. And yeah, we'll have some announcements going on as to what's going to happen with Ed's World as well. So come on in and check us out, hang out with us, and check out the news. But before we get started, head on over to freedomscoop.com. Freedomscoop.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all your news and commentary needs. We've got the generational gap. We've got the R-rated conservative. We've got Stephen Ignoramus. We've got Wyatt Birkenhoff. And we've got the Freckles and Brit Show. Come on over and check us out over there. Get some merch. Come and support the cause. And come and help us move forward and get more of the news to you. So we'll start today looking at the Dow futures for the week. We'll look at the what Friday did for us first. So Friday was a pretty steady day on the Dow Industrial Average. We did wind up being up a little bit, but that for the most part comes from the fact that we were up for most of the day. I mean, if we look at where the futures line is versus where the end line was, it was a pretty steady day. But I mean, we've come back to a point where a bad day on the Dow is an even day. And that's a good thing. We're going to start to see a lot of things shift around, a lot of things change, and everything's going to go back and I think be back to normal. There's some dissenting opinions out there, but let's see what Investors Business Daily has to say. An advertisement, once again. All right, from Investors Business Daily. Dow Jones Futures rise amid coronavirus market rally rotation. Tesla China sales rebound. This is from Ed Carson. Dow Jones Futures rose solidly early Monday morning. S&P 500 futures climbed modestly, while NASDAQ futures tilted lower. The coronavirus stock market rally continues to surge, with the NASDAQ reaching record highs Friday. But there's a great deal of sector rotation going on as real economy names lead and some coronavirus plays start to hit resistance. The current stock market trend says that this is a good time to be invested, but investors should also diversify, looking for A-quality stocks but from a variety of sectors. Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, United Health, ServiceNow, Dexcom, Nvidia, Facebook, and Tesla are all worth keeping a close eye on. Apple stock, United Health stock, Dexcom stock, and Tesla stock are all in buy zones. Microsoft stock is between buy points along with ServiceNow stock and arguably Facebook stock. Amazon stock and Nvidia stock are near entries. Yeah, Facebook kind of bent down. Facebook is one of those things. Now, I like the fact that they are publicly traded and you can go and kind of punish them with your investments and reward them when they do good shit. But Facebook has proven over the last week that they're just going to bend down and suck off whoever's going to be the most politically convenient for them at this point. Yes, Zuckerberg got down on his knees in front of Trump not this past week, but the week before, when it came down to the fact that, he might go along with the Section 230 revamp. Yeah, he got down on his knees in front of Trump, but of course, then again, last week he turned around and bent down and got on his knees in front of the Black Lives Matter movement as well. So he's been a real bukkake target for this past week, but if it's how he wants to run his business, then that's on him. The only thing that I do with his platform at this point is stream this show to it to kind of reach out to people that may be in disagreement with me. But that's about it, so run it how you want to. Apple stock, UNH stock, Microsoft stock, Now stock, Amazon stock, Nvidia stock, Facebook stock, Tesla stock, and Dexcom stock are all on IBD leaderboard. Apple stock, Microsoft stock, Nvidia stock, and United Health stock are all on Swing Trader. Microsoft stock, United Health stock, and ServiceNow stock are all on IBD long-term leaderboard. These are all top stocks, but they come from a range of sectors. Some of these companies are thriving during the coronavirus, while others are weathering the storm. Tesla electric vehicle sales rebounded in May, according to a trade association. Separately, UK giant AstraZeneca has held preliminary discussions about buying Gilead Sciences, according to Bloomberg News. Other reports said talks haven't continued. AstraZeneca stock has a $160 billion market cap, and Gilead stock $96 billion. Dow Jones futures today rose 0.8% versus fair value. S&P 500 futures advanced 0.4%. Nasdaq 100 futures fell 0.2% during the coronavirus market rally. Dow Jones futures are still prone to big moves. Dow Jones giant Boeing signaled further big gains before the open, with airline stocks once again taking flight. Love the pun there, but they are still well off pre-coronavirus levels. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into the actual trading in the next regular stock market session. On Saturday, OPEC agreed to extend production cuts and step up enforcement. That could provide further support for crude oil futures. On Sunday, China reported a smaller than expected export decline, but imports tumbled. So that's what they're looking at for the day. It looks like we're going to see some stuff again. I will be paying attention to that as I'm on the road today. So we'll check that out and see what's going on there. And I'll probably be advising my replacement later on. So check that out. All right. Next one here from CCN. And I wanted to put this in here because they actually brought up a really good point in this. And they're even coming out and saying that we're sitting at a recovery point. And these were people that were praying for the market to crash just a few weeks ago. Let's see what Cryptocurrency News has to say. Dow futures rocket, and here's why stocks will shatter record highs. This is from Ben Brown. Traders kept the party alive Monday with stocks set to open higher at the bell. Dow futures point to a 200.7% gain. After tech stocks punched their way to an all-time high on Friday, the S&P 500 and Dow Jones may not be far behind. And there's one good reason why: a weaker dollar, as Peter Kinsella at Union Banker Privy put it this morning. A weaker dollar is a massive catalyst for stocks that many analysts aren't talking about yet. Why? Because a weak dollar is beneficial for giant American corporations. Most make a significant portion of earnings abroad and get a better conversion rate when the dollar weakens. Traders start this week in the same mood as last Friday, aggressively risk on. Dow futures were up almost 200 points in early trading Monday, extending 3 straight weeks of gains for the index. S&P 500 futures were up 0.6%, while Nasdaq Composite futures point to yet further highs, up 0.28% in the pre-market session. Those investors waiting for significant pullback may be disappointed. Stronger than expected jobs data on Friday propelled the Nasdaq to a record high, suggesting the worst of the economic earthquake is over. Kinsella agreed that what he's seeing on the currency markets is consistent with a recovery, not a continuing crash. The Bloomberg Dollar Index shows the world's reserve currency has fallen over the last month. How to interpret this? A simple reading is there's more appetite for risk and less demand for safe cash. That's indicative of a recovery. So the reason, once again, that I put this in was the fact that I mean, like I said, these guys were in the camp of the economy's just going to crash again and we're going to get down below 19,000 coming up here in the near future. And they've changed their tune on that. But as I mentioned, they did bring up a good point. The dollar is weaker because we printed our way out of this. Nobody is in the position right now to buy any of our bonds. Well, they might be at this point, but at the time that we decided that we needed to do that massive stimulus, whose check I cut up, nobody was in the market to buy bonds. We literally had to print our way out of that, which means that we are going to see some inflationary numbers. Our gas is going to go up, our groceries are going to go up, and our dollar is going to generally go a shorter distance. I was about to say less far, but I realized that sounded idiotic. But yeah, the dollar is not going to go as far as it did before any of this because of the way that we had to handle it. And CCN is absolutely right on that. I don't care for the fact that they are praying for our dollar to fall at this point because that does affect trading around the world, but they do bring up a good point. If you adjust for inflation, the new record high may be at or just slightly below where we were when we started this off. So it's going to be something to watch. It's going to be something to watch on the markets, and we'll see what happens. We'll definitely see. But just the fact that we're just about back to 29,000 again fills me with a lot of hope. It fills me with a lot of hope for this country. and the way that people want to be. And I'm not going to lie, for the American greed. The American greed is going to drive all this, and that may wind up being a good thing. A lot of people on the socialist camp may say it sucks, but it might wind up being a good thing after all. All right, speaking of the markets here, let's have a look at Market Watch. U.S. regains 2.5 million jobs in May. Unemployment falls to 13.3% as economy starts to recover from the coronavirus. Yeah, that right there was not something. This right here was not something I had ever hoped to see in a news headline. And unemployment falls to 13.3%. It was a rough one. It was a rough couple months, but of course it was the federal government coming out and saying, you are not allowed to go to work. Let's read on. The numbers, the U.S. regained 2.5 million jobs in May. The unemployment rate fell to 13.3%, confounding Wall Street expectations for another big wave of layoffs and signaling the economy began to revive last month from the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression of the 1930s. Stock prices surged after the surprisingly upbeat May employment numbers. Economists polled by MarketWatch had forecast a loss of 7.25 million jobs. The unemployment rate had been expected to rise to 19% from a post-World War II record of 14.7% in April. Every state began to reopen their economies to some degree in May, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics said 2.7 million people who had temporarily lost jobs amid the pandemic returned to work. A slew of additional recent economic indicators also suggest economic growth had started to revive, if just marginally. Bars and restaurants, the segment of the economy worst hit by the pandemic, recalled 1.4 million workers following a loss of more than 6 million positions in the prior 2 months. Many businesses had either closed or forced to operate at reduced capacity, given strict rules on social distancing. Employment rebounded by 464,000 in construction, by 368,000 in retail, and by 225,000 in manufacturing. The healthcare industry also began to recover from job losses in April, boosting employment by 312,000. The fear of catching the coronavirus at hospitals and doctor and dental offices had led to a near collapse in demand for non-emergency treatments. In another oddly good sign, the average hourly wages declined in May. Average earnings had soared in April, largely because job losses fell most heavily on workers in lower-paying lines of work. Taking their last pay out of the arithmetic, the decrease in pay is another indicator that employees in retail, restaurants, and other service industries started going back to work. And this is all a good thing. I mean, anytime people can go out there and earn a living, it's going to affect the markets, it's going to affect the general attitude of the country, and it's just going to affect generally how our country runs. And it was amazing to me to see the reaction to the jobs report on Friday. I actually watched a lot of it going along through the day. First off, when we started watching the jobs report, the first thing that people started to say, and they will take whatever narrative MSNBC feeds them and try and spew it back out on social media like an NPC. That's the reason that we call them the NPCs. I actually saw somebody post on Twitter that the only reason that we had a jobs report go up was because we had contact tracers and testing sites. Those were the only jobs that were created. Nobody else had gone back to work, and we were still fucking the economy. These were all temporary jobs, and they were all going to go away, and our economy was just going to crash again. And the jobs report that was put out by MarketWatch, which is hardly a right-wing site at this point, they're neutral to left on any stretch of the imagination, proves that is false, that most of these people that got their jobs back are going to work. I mean, that's over 1 million jobs right here just in this paragraph, 464, 368, 225. And that is not including all the people that went back to work in the restaurant industry. But yeah, that's what they tried to tell us anyway. And then within 24 hours of that, Nancy Pelosi was out here trying to claim credit for the rebound and the jobs markets, saying that it was the House and Senate working together that caused that and not President Trump or any of his policies. Let me give you a hint, Mrs. Pelosi, because you need one at some point here. If you can blame the president for state governors coming together and saying that their people weren't allowed to go to work, if you can blame the president for the massive job losses, then you are not allowed to take credit when the jobs start to come back. It doesn't work that way. And you are on record saying that all of the job losses were the president's fault. So you can take that and shove it up your ass. It's bony. You'll be able to find it pretty easily, but yeah. That's what that all is. And I'd look forward to seeing how many more people do go back to work. And once again, we saw a lot of businesses that went down the tubes over this. But we've got a big entrepreneurial spirit in this country, and a lot of people learned how to cook over this pandemic. So I do think that we may not see the same restaurants come back, but we'll see new ones rise up in their place. And that goes the same for retailers, construction, a lot of other, a host of other industries. Car repair is going to go up. Now that people are going to go out and start driving more. Because they put off that car repair until after the pandemic, and then it either broke down completely and they have to buy a new one, or they need to put some money into it. So there's a lot of things that are going to come out of this. And I think we're going to see a really, really good summer. All right, let's move on over to Twitter, where all the people are so angry with the president. So the president tweeted out today, "Could it be even remotely possible that Roger Goodell's rather interesting statement of peace and reconciliation, he was intimating that it would now be okay for players to kneel or opt to stand for the national anthem, thereby disrespecting our country and our flag?" And it's an unpopular opinion among right-wing Twitter, but it's definitely a popular opinion among liberty Twitter. I don't give a fuck if they want to kneel for the flag and the national anthem. I don't care. If that's what you want to do, you have the freedom of speech to do so. And the Supreme Court has ruled the fact that it's legal to burn a flag if you're doing it in protest. So anything up to and including that, I would think would be legal under your protected First Amendment right to free speech. What's going on with this, and part of the reason that it's trending right now, is the fact that, Trump 41% is... Yeah, CNN still thinks that Biden's going to win in a landslide this week. I just looked over at the trending right now, but let's go back to what Trump put out. One of the things that brought this up into the trending point was the fact that everyone wanted to get out there and point out the fact that Trump said intimating in this. And one of the tweets, one of the responses that I saw when I looked down into the trend for this was the fact that, well, the president goes out and is barely literate on Twitter every other day, and then he uses such a fancy word like intimating on all this. Who wrote this tweet for him? I'm sorry to say, I'm willing to bet that the Donald actually wrote this one for himself. Now, yes, I understand that the man has money. He's got a buttload of money. Big time buttload of money on this. So he could have easily paid his way through school and got the teachers to look the other way just so he actually had the certification for it. He graduated from Wharton. But do keep in mind that he did go to Wharton. So even if he did pay his way, he had to pick something up somewhere. The guy's a lot more educated than you think he is. I know he plays this kind of redneck, down-to-earth guy on Twitter. He's a play actor. He's been doing it for most of his career. He plays a character. This is not him. And even The Apprentice Trump and President Trump, the two characters are two different things. You can see it in the rhetoric. You can see, when I watched Trump on Top Gear, it was, I think, a 2014 episode of Top Gear where the guys went out and they tested supercars so they could try to sell them to an unnamed millionaire who's going to be named at the end of the show. It wound up being Trump. And just Top Gear Trump from that episode and President Trump, there's a vast difference between the person. There's just a vast difference between the person. He plays this kind of rednecky, down-to-earth kind of guy he plays that on Twitter. He plays it on TV. And part of that is just to get the progressive left riled up and make them show their cards. He's very good at it. But he is play acting for the most of this. And anybody who thinks that he really is as dumb as his Twitter feed reads is just being fooled along the way. All right, let's keep going here. From CNN, Minneapolis City Council members intend to defund and dismantle the city's police department. This is from Dakin Andone and Christina McSorris and Josh Campbell over on CNN. 9 members of the Minneapolis City Council on Sunday announced they intend to defund and dismantle the city's police department following the police killing of George Floyd. We committed to dismantling policing as we know it in the city of Minneapolis and to rebuild with our community a new model of public safety that actually keeps our community safe, Council President Lisa Bender told CNN. With 9 votes, the city would have a veto-proof supermajority of the council's 13 members. Bender said. Sunday's pledge was an acknowledgement that the current system is not working, Bender said. We need to listen, especially to our black leaders, to our communities of color for whom policing is not working, and to really let the solutions lie in our community, she said. Pressed for details on what dismantling might look like, Bender told CNN she was looking to shift police funding towards community-based strategies, and that the city council would discuss how to replace the current police department. The idea of having no police department is certainly not in the short term, she added. Obviously. Bender and other city council members analyzed the nature of 911 calls by constituents, she said, and found most were for mental health services, health and EMT, and fire services. The 9 council members made the announcement at a community rally in Minneapolis. News of the announcement was first reported by The Appeal. Calls by some to defund or outright abolish police departments have grown in the wake of Floyd's death and nationwide protests against police brutality. City council members had previously said they would take steps to dismantle the police department, including Bender, who tweeted earlier this week, "Yes, we are going to dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department and replace it with a transformative new model of public safety." Jeremiah Ellison, city councilman for Ward 5, tweeted a similar message Thursday, writing, "We're going to dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department, and when we're done, we're not simply going to glue it back together. We're going to dramatically rethink how we approach public safety and emergency response." So, I think it's worth noting here at this point that when I get back from my vacation, I am going to drum up a little bit of money and I'm going to go and take my real estate license course and exam. Because there are going to be a lot of people fleeing Minnesota here in the coming years, I think. Just even up to the end of this year, there's going to be a lot of flight from Minnesota. And I think having the real estate license will give me some time to focus more on this show and my other shows. It'll give me some more time to focus on Freedom Scoop, growing that brand and getting more notice out there for people. But it'll also make me a ton of money on commission if people are going to continue to come in and start trying to flee Minnesota, especially Minneapolis, where there's not going to be any police department. And how far do you think that's going to extend with the current governor that they have in place? I do think that's going to go much, much further than just the city of Minneapolis. So we're going to see, I think we're going to see a lot of flight out of cities between the COVID pandemic and the riots that we saw this past week and the week before. We're going to see a lot of city flight, but especially coming out of places like Minnesota where they got it worst of all because they were at the epicenter of it. So keep an eye out for that, and we've got a bit of a rebuttal here from Fox News. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey rejects City Council's push to defund police despite veto-proof majority. This is from Greg Ree. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey on Sunday reiterated that he doesn't support abolishing the city's police force hours after a veto-proof majority of members of the Minneapolis City Council said they want to take that drastic step in the wake of the in-custody death of George Floyd. Frey, who ordered a police station to evacuate as rioters burned it to the ground last month, was shouted down by a large gathering of demonstrators near his home on Saturday when he defied their demands to shut off the city's police forces entirely. "I'll work relentlessly with Chief Madiria Arradondo and alongside community toward deep structural reform and addressing systemic racism in police culture," Frey said in a statement to CARE. "We're ready to dig in and enact more community-led public safety strategies on behalf of our city, but I do not support abolishing the Minneapolis Police Department." Before the crowd outside his home, Frey had prefaced his comments by saying he was coming to grips with his own brokenness and by promising to put the police union in its place. But many protesters clearly were unconvinced, yelling, "It's not about you," and "Go home, Jacob, go home." They were at his home. He was home. Did anybody else catch that? Fry is also seeking federal and state aid for his city, citing more than $55 million in damage. So it's not going to be enough for them to go and restructure at this point. These people are out for blood. The mob has spoken, and they do want to have no police. They want to have an anarchic state, or, as was pointed out to me in the live chat on Friday last week, they possibly also want to have Black Lives Matter be the police force, or have a federal police force come in and be their police, because they do want the federal government to do everything for them at this point. But they definitely want to get rid of the regular city police department because they think it's unsavable. And policing does draw a certain type of person. I'm not going to lie about that. It does draw certain personalities. Yes, there are the good ones out there. There are a lot of good cops out there who want to protect and serve and do want to dive in front of a bullet for you if it does come down to some sort of shootout. They are out there to protect and serve, but there are also the police officers out there, the state troopers, that'll just give you a ticket for having a noisy exhaust, or a speeding ticket because you've got hood scoops on your car. They'll pull you over for the way that you look at them, the kind of car you're driving, whether it's winter or not. I got pulled over for driving an old 93 Chrysler Fifth Avenue on the edge of a sort of a bad neighborhood, on the edge between a bad neighborhood and a good neighborhood, and I was driving an old beat up car at the time. Mind you, it was also the middle of winter, and I had a nice car that I just didn't want to see salt. So yes, there are the cops out there that just want to make a name for themselves and an example for themselves, but the other side of it is there are the good ones. They do, for the most part, want to protect and serve, but one of the other things, and I pointed this out on Twitter too, you would need a lot less enforcement if you cut down on a lot of the laws out there, especially the duplicate laws that are duplicated by the federal and state government and even the localities. But just cut some of the laws out and you wouldn't need to enforce so much. We have so many laws that the average person commits 3 felonies a day and doesn't even know it. Because we have so many laws on the books. Just cut a bunch of those out. Get rid of a bunch of them. There's a lot of victimless crime out there that people go to jail for. And there's a lot of victim crime that people don't go to jail for because they know a guy. Just get rid of a lot of the laws, break it down to murder, theft, and crimes that have a victim. And just let everyone else go and live their life. Alright. Let's keep going here from CNN. Trump remains confident in Defense Secretary Esper, White House says. This is from Kristen Holmes. 3 days after the White House press secretary sidestepped questions on whether President Trump had confidence in Defense Secretary Mark Esper, Kayleigh McEnany issued a new strong statement of support to CNN. President Trump remains confident in Secretary Esper, McEnany said in a statement. President Esper has been instrumental in securing our nation's streets and ensuring Americans have peace and confidence in the security of their place of business, places of worship, and their homes. Esper split with Trump on Wednesday, saying he does not support using active duty troops to quell the large-scale protests across the United States, triggered by the death of George Floyd, and the forces should only be used in law enforcement role as a last resort. Speaking from the Pentagon briefing room podium, Esper noted that we are not in one of those situations now, distancing himself from Trump's recent threat to deploy the military to enforce order. The option to use active duty forces in law enforcement roles should only be used as a matter of last resort, and only in the most urgent and dire of situations. We are not in one of those situations now. I do not support invoking the Insurrection Act, he told reporters. Esper also distanced himself from a line photo op outside St. John's Church. McEnany would not directly answer Wednesday whether Trump still has confidence in Esper, saying instead, as of right now, Secretary Esper is still Secretary Esper. And I don't necessarily stand with Esper on this one. I don't think he's completely in the right on this. And my justification for saying so is the fact that the military, as we know it, was not meant to go and have endless wars overseas as we've continued to see them have. Which sometimes I do look at and wonder if that's not just a ploy to keep them employed, keep them on the government dole, and make sure that we do have an active training military going on all the time. That is another point for another episode. The point of having the military was to defend American interests, business, and the pursuit of property. It's meant to protect Americans, and we have Americans out there dying in the streets right now because of the rioters. We have businesses that are never going to be able to rebuild because the rioters just keep coming back and fucking them a little bit more every time. Every time they go out, they just keep breaking more stuff. They burn the buildings to the ground, they destroy the structure, and some of these businesses aren't going to be able to come back. These people need to have their property defended, and that's what the military was for. I don't agree with turning the military on American citizens, but a lot of the people that are out there have made statements saying they want to renounce their citizenship as well. So that's something that you do have to weigh one on the other. And you do have to think about the fact that, yes, these people are supposed to be defending American life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. Secretary Esper and President Trump are in a very big catch-22 right now. Whether to turn the military on American citizens or whether to use them to let the military go. And I would not want to be in this situation, but there's going to be more coming here. We've got another story on the next thing that we're going to be seeing here coming up on the stack. All right, speaking of the NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell says the league was wrong for not listening to players earlier about racism. This is from Chloe Mellis over at CNN. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell said Friday that the league should have listened to players earlier about racism concerns in response to NFL players calling on the league to condemn racism and support its black players. Goodell posted a video to NFL social media on Friday in response to the video Stronger Together, which features multiple black NFL players asking the league to take a strong stance in the wake of George Floyd's death. We, the National Football League, condemn racism and the systematic oppression of black people, Goodell said. We, the National Football League, admit we were wrong for not listening to NFL players earlier and encourage all to speak out and peacefully protest, Goodell said. Notably, Goodell did not mention former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick, who had faced backlash from the league and others for kneeling before games while the national anthem played to protest police brutality. No team has offered Kaepernick a contract since 2017, which many attribute to his protests. Kaepernick accused NFL team owners of colluding to keep him from being signed. The NFL denied any collusion, but in 2019 they reached a settlement with Kaepernick and former teammate Eric Reid, who knelt with him. Goodell said he will be reaching out to players and others who have spoken out on these issues to see how we can improve and go forward better and more united NFL family. It's unclear if that includes Kaepernick. CNN has reached out to Kaepernick for comment. So, I need to point something out here. And this is something that I point out repeatedly. First off, if the NFL is going to continue to get political like this, I'm done. I am not going to watch them anymore. I love the Packers. I bleed green and gold, and I have for a very long time, and I would, under most circumstances, probably continue to until the day that I die. With that being said, though, I used to be, when I was younger, when I still lived in Kenosha, I used to be that fan that got up on Sunday morning, made breakfast, and usually something to quell the still drunkenness, because I was pretty much a lush at that point. Made breakfast, and after breakfast I cleaned up the kitchen and sat down and watched whatever game was on Sunday that was being cast. Usually it was the Packer at noon, then the 3:30 game, and then the Sunday night game. And usually I'd do whatever I could to catch the Monday night game as well. I was that guy that watched every football game that I could, and I flipped the channels to go and check out the rest of them. I consumed all the football that I could. And after the kneeling protests, I stopped. Because I didn't want to watch the NFL get politicized. I wanted a break from politics, and that's what I turned to the NFL for. I still watched the Packers, but I no longer had any reason to go out and watch any of the other teams. Pretty much as soon as the Packer game was over, I went off and did something else. And we saw a lot of people like that. We saw a lot of people just stop watching the NFL entirely, completely stop. And a lot of those people were people like me that watched every game that they could throughout a Sunday and a Monday and a Thursday. They stopped watching it entirely, or otherwise they continued to watch their team but just ignore the rest of the league. There were a lot of people like that. As far as Kaepernick goes, Kaepernick was dumb to go out and do something that would tarnish his brand's name, like kneeling for the national anthem, something that would cause viewership to drop. And I know that was a reason that a lot of the people stopped watching the NFL, was because Colin Kaepernick took the knee. That was a big part of the reason for that. That's not the reason that Colin Kaepernick is not playing right now. I'm sorry. Let's backtrack here to, once again, we'll go back to before I moved. Back when I still lived in Kenosha, back when Kaepernick was going on his rookie season. So in his first 3 seasons, Colin Kaepernick was very proud of the fact that he was undefeated against the Green Bay Packers. Kaepernick was raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, so he grew up being a Packers fan. And he was a big Packers fan, but it was always a point of pride to him that he had gone undefeated against the team that he'd grown up rooting for. And he was a good player. He had a lot of touchdowns. He had an arm like a shotgun. He had an arm on par with Brett Favre. He was a great player. He laser focused. He could hit anybody. He had a great run game on his own. His run game rivaled Aaron Rodgers's for 3 seasons. After that 3rd season, I don't know if it was just because he hooked up with that girl that made him go Muslim and he lost all that weight or anything else that happened there, if there was something psychological that went along with him. Just something happened between that 3rd and 4th season, and by the end of it, Colin Kaepernick sucked out loud. He couldn't play anymore. He couldn't hit his targets anymore. He was getting sacked left and right. He sucked. And the creme de la crop of that was when he got defeated 38-0 by the Green Bay Packers in his 4th season. He was no longer undefeated against the Green Bay Packers. And he got benched very shortly after that. And it was after he got benched that he started doing the kneeling thing. A lot of people don't remember that, but he had already been on the bench when he started kneeling for this, trying to keep himself in the spotlight so he would stay important and people would still want to buy his merchandise. A lot of this, I think, was a marketing ploy. I don't think it was the fact that he actually believed in any of this. I think it was a marketing ploy to try and make the whole league controversial because the league had turned around and benched him. But Colin Kaepernick went from being one of the best quarterbacks in the league to having a negative quarterback rating in his final season playing as a starter. If he had continued to play at the best of his abilities, he could kneel all that he wanted. Goodell would just keep the camera off of him during the national anthem. And we never saw any of that during the national anthem. They never showed the players. They rarely showed the national anthem at the beginning of the games. That was something you never saw unless it was like the Super Bowl. You never saw the national anthem for any of these games. So nobody would have known or cared if he'd still been playing as good as he was. But he sucked. And that's the reason he doesn't have a job. Not because of some systemic racism or the fact that he took a stand. He sucked out loud. So that's where I stand on that. And I took way too long into bringing that up here, but let's keep going here. From the Daily Wire, Equality, Uber Eats giving free delivery to only black-owned restaurants. This is from Amanda Prestigiacomo. Uber Eats is offering free delivery to only black-owned restaurants until the end of 2020, the company's CEO announced on email on Thursday. Uber Eats will promote black-owned restaurants on its app, and the service will not charge delivery fees to those restaurants for the remainder of the year, Fox News reported. The company will also provide discounted rides to black-owned small businesses who have been hit hard by COVID-19, though it did not add how much of a discount will be given, the report added. As a company, we believe that everyone has the right to move freely, no matter where they live or the color of their skin, CEO Dara Khosrowshahi said via email to customers, according to the Detroit Bureau. We're proud of how Uber has helped improve transportation equity over the last decade, but the reality remains that black Americans often don't feel safe to move freely in many places around our country, and they still face enormous barriers that others do not. I wish the lives of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and countless others weren't so violently cut short, Khosrowshahi said. I wish the institutional racism and the police violence it gives rise to didn't cause their deaths. The CEO pledged that Uber will continue to crack down on discrimination, harassment, and racism on its platform, and will hold its users accountable to these standards of basic respect and human decency, Fox noted. I respectfully ask anyone not willing to abide by these rules to delete Uber, Khosrowshahi said. I want to focus on this paragraph right here. The CEO pledged that Uber will continue to crack down on discrimination, harassment, and racism on its platform. Okay, giving a discount to riders that are going to black-owned businesses and giving free delivery to businesses that are owned by black people is discrimination. And it is racism, by the way. So I don't know how they are continuing to crack down on this when they are openly doing it, and they're actually advocating the fact that they're doing so. And I'm pretty sure that Uber is done at this point. Of course, there's going to be the one side of everything that's going to go, they're so brave. They're so amazing. And they're so wonderful because they're doing this for the black community. Well, it's racism. It is out and out racism, and it's discrimination. Think about what would happen if this went the other way. If, I don't know, Eat Street came out and said, well, we're not going to charge delivery fee anymore to any white-owned businesses, but we're going to charge a huge one to black-owned businesses. Eat Street would be shut down by the federal government, if not all of the localities, the next day. But because it's going the other way, for whatever reason, it's okay. In fact, celebrated. So I don't understand why this is and why they're able to get away with this, but this is something that needs to definitely be looked into. So we'll be looking at this and we'll be keeping this. And I've never used an Uber or Uber Eats. I am an Eat Street guy all the way. I did Grubhub for a little while too, but I'm an Eat Street guy all the way. And I will not be giving Uber Eats any of my business at this point. All right, next one here. From Transportation Nation. This came to me from Saint over in the Discord server. And if you're not in the Discord server, get on over there because you can go ahead and put articles in. I'll go in and vet them, and if they meet the smell test, or I can put them to a green check verified story, I will read them out on the air. As with this one, trucking law expert answers if truckers have the right to stand your ground if attacked. This is from... Oh, they don't give me an author. As reports continue to emerge this week of rioters targeting big rigs amid the social unrest and outrage over the death of George Floyd, truckers are being faced with increasing dangers. One trucker's recent viral social media post urging drivers to use deadly force if required to protect yourself is sparking debate about the legal rights to stand your ground. It's important for truckers to understand the law and your rights if, God forbid, you find yourself in a dangerous situation. For answers, we turn to Joe Papalardo of the Gallagher Sharp law firm of Cleveland, Ohio. Papalardo has been practicing law in the transportation industry for 40 years. He spends most of his time representing trucking companies in complex and multi-million-dollar accident cases, but jumped at the chance to discuss this ongoing issue. Papalardo says that if a trucker is faced with imminent harm or a reasonable fear of violence, he is within his rights to protect himself. If you use force that is intended or likely to cause great bodily harm to another, and if that person is in the process of unlawfully entering your truck, then there is a presumption that you are allowed to use that force, Papalardo informed. Specifically, he pointed to stand your ground laws, also sometimes referred to as castle doctrine. These laws in states across the country allow for people to defend themselves when threatened, especially while in their homes, but the latitude given varies from state to state. For instance, Papalardo looked upon the law in Ohio in the Buckeye State. The stand your ground provision extends to your vehicle as well as your home. Even in states that don't have specific stand your ground laws, Papalardo says a prosecutor would have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the trucker acted with criminal intent, which he said is a very high standard to meet. However, the standard of proof is much lower in a civil case. In those instances, Papalardo says a reasonable care standard is applied. Think about what the average person is being called for jury duty would think about this, he urged. There's going to be more than one version, and the protesters are going to say something different than the trucker. What about the argument that a trucker used excessive force when it was the cargo the looters really wanted? The law would make the distinction between purely protecting property and protecting a person, but no one could know that they were only interested in packages, so it would be reasonable to assume that I myself is in danger and have a right to get out of there, Papalardo explained. And yes, this is absolutely right at this point. If your life is threatened, then I know that there are some states out there that have a duty to retreat, but if your life is threatened, get up there and defend yourself. That's what the Second Amendment is for, that make sure that you have the right to keep yourself protected. And if it's your rig and your trailer, then you have the right to protect that too. If it is a company trailer or a company rig, then you would have to go with your company's handbook, your local and state laws, the local and state laws of the state that you're currently traveling in, and just what your company policy is. There are things that you would have to consider there. But if you're imminently protecting yourself, then yes, this should be a no-brainer. So thanks to Saint for that one. All right, next one here from Yahoo News. Sesame Street and CNN host a town hall on racism. Don't judge people by the color of their skin, fur, or feathers. This is from Elena Shepard. On Saturday morning, Sesame Street and CNN teamed up to host an honest conversation with kids and families about racism amid national protests demanding justice for George Floyd, who died in a violent encounter with the Minneapolis police. The 60-minute show called Coming Together Standing Up to Racism opened with Elmo and his dad Louie video chatting about the discrimination and the ongoing protests. Not all streets are like Sesame Street, Louie explained to Elmo and viewers. On Sesame Street, we all love and respect one another. Across the country, people of color, especially in the black community, are being treated unfairly because of how they look, their culture, race, and who they are. What we are seeing is people saying enough is enough. They want to end racism. Elmo wants to end racism too, Elmo replied. From there, the town hall, moderated by CNN anchor Van Jones, national correspondent Erica Hill, and Big Bird, answered video questions submitted by children and parents from across the country. Questions like, how do I help fight against racism and stay safe? If a person calls me a name and makes me feel like I'm lesser than they are because of the color of my skin, what do I do? Why do people have different skin colors? Psychologists, a former police chief, doctors, Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, and Sesame Street residents Gordon and Maria delivered nuanced and thoughtful information that was digestible for children. The overall message: to educate, indoctrinate children about the history of racism and slavery in America, the realities of white privilege, peaceful protesting, and loving each other regardless of skin color. This was not the first time CNN and Sesame Street teamed up to educate kids and parents about important matters. Back in April, they collaborated on a town hall to explain the coronavirus. Where do I begin? I don't even know where to begin on this. Let your children have a childhood. Yes, I understand. I understand that there's still racism and it's still coming from the adults in the family, but this is pure indoctrination of the fact that they're trying to show the people that there's this absolute racism that's keeping black people from doing anything else in this country. And the worst part of it is it's coming from a multi-million-dollar anchor named Van Jones, who's black and who has had nothing holding him back at this point. But they're using the bright colored characters that the kids know and love to come out and try and convince them that one thing is true and one thing is not. I cannot believe the fact that we're sitting here and letting CNN do this to all of us. CNN is nothing but a propaganda rag anymore at this point. Yes, I will still use them at points because they're green check certified, so they do have to meet a certain standard or lose their green check verification. But the fact that they do this with their opinion pages to try and indoctrinate children to come in and go on their way of thinking so they grow up in the proper way of thinking, it's just... why? And I'm old enough that was about the only kids show there was when I was growing up. So I'm familiar with Sesame Street in a very, very, very familiar fashion. That was all that there was. I know very shortly after I moved out of the age group for the younger children, Barney and Friends came along. My sister was probably one of the first of the Barney generation. And that was when they started expanding some more of these programs out to kids. But yeah, we had pretty much Sesame Street and Reading Rainbow when I was in that age group. And the fact that they would do this now to Sesame Street. If I could have a conversation with Jim Henson, that would be the one that I want to have, is to see what he would say to something like this, if he could ever have a chance to see this. he's got to be rolling over in his grave right now. He's got to be spinning so fast that, I don't know, attach a dynamo to the guy and we'll solve the world's energy crisis. All right, next one. From the Hill. Bush, Romney won't support Trump in re-election. New York Times. This is from Justine Coleman. Oh, there's a video playing, but you can't hear it because I don't have the audio on. Former President George W. Bush and Senator Mitt Romney will not support the president's re-election, the New York Times reported on Saturday. Several Republican leaders are struggling with whether to endorse the sitting president in his re-election campaign, with some considering endorsing or voting for the presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden. Recent events involving Trump's response to the protests over police treatment of African Americans and coronavirus pandemic have inspired an urgency among Republicans to decide whether to publicly discuss their voting plans for November, according to the Times. People familiar with George W. Bush's thinking told the newspaper he will not back the president's re-election, and former Governor Jeb Bush, his brother, is not sure how he will vote. I know how I'll vote. Freddie Ford, a spokesman for the former president, told the Times that George W. Bush would not get involved in the elections and would speak only on policy issues like he did last week. And nobody cared when he said that the U.S. must examine our tragic failures on race. Romney will not support Trump and is considering writing in his wife's name again or casting a different ballot, according to the Times. The 2012 Republican nominee told The Atlantic in February he would not back the president after he voted to convict him of abuse of power during the Senate impeachment trial. Retired General Colin Powell, who served as the Secretary of State under Bush, announced on CNN's State of the Union on Sunday that he will be voting for Biden in November because Trump lies about things. Nope, not going to go there. I had to think about it. Powell's declaration of support for Biden sparked sharp rebuke from Trump himself, who tweeted that the retired general was a real stiff who was very responsible for getting us into the disastrous Middle East wars. Maybe I don't have to go into it because Trump will do it for me. Another well-known GOP member, Cindy McCain, the widow of former Senator John McCain, is likely to back Biden in the race, but it's unclear how public she will make her decision, the Times reported. So, I don't know why any of this matters. First off, I don't want to hear a word from Bush about racial issues because he is best known for ravaging the Middle East and bombing brown children. And that's the same thing for Powell, too. For God's sakes, Powell. You put us over there. Trump lies about things. Fuck you. Weapons of mass destruction, you asshole. You warmongering asshole. And I thought about this for a little while, and one of the things that I really started to think about, I pointed this out on Twitter after this came to my attention. We were on the precipice before the COVID pandemic hit of getting out of Afghanistan with a structured plan and with the option to actually just pull out of Afghanistan whole cloth just to get out of there. And then COVID happened, and then you never heard a word about that again. Now, yes, of course, we're hearing about it once again as COVID is passing. We're hearing about possibly doing a full-on pullout again of Afghanistan, getting all of our troops out of there, even though the structured plan is still in place. And these people want to make sure that Trump doesn't make it past the ballot line because they can get Biden in there and continue to fuck that region for every drop of oil they can get out of it. Because Biden will just go along with whatever the establishment says. And we will stay at war in the Middle East forever if we have Biden in. So, and of course, people like George W. Bush, who have a massive boner for going to war in the Middle East, don't want to see the pullout of Afghanistan. They want to see us in there forever and ever and ever, no matter how unpopular the war is. And we've been there for 2 decades, and nothing has happened at this point. So, yes, read between the lines, see what they're going to, and why is George W. Bush even weighing in? He was quiet during the Obama, well, I suppose Obama kept us over in the Middle East anyway, but yeah, he was quiet during the Obama administration. And now that another Republican is in office, now he wants to come up and start running his mouth. So, No. All these people can just shut their fucking mouths. Romney too, because he's another one that would love to see us in the war in the Middle East forever and ever. All right, we got a couple more here. From the Texas Tribune, Joe Biden tells Texas Democrats, "We have a real chance to turn the state blue." This is from Alex Samuels. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden on Saturday renewed his vow to help flip Texas as the state gets increased attention heading into November. "Texas is an important battleground state for our campaign in 2020, he said on Facebook Live, addressing the state Democratic Party's convention, which went online only this year because of the coronavirus pandemic. I think we have done a real chance to turn the state blue because of the work that all of you have done. We've kept the House of Representatives. We have to win over the United States Senate. We have to flip Texas House. We have to lead and deliver meaningful change for people who are hurting all across this nation." Biden spoke for roughly 5 minutes from his back porch in Delaware to close out the state's virtual convention. The week-long event featured a slate of high-profile Democrats that included House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and former Democratic presidential candidates Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Beto O'Rourke, and Julian Castro. No, it's Julian. Biden's speech came a day after he formally clinched the party's nomination for the presidency. His campaign has previously said he plans to take the Lone Star State seriously, along with recent Republican-dominated states like Georgia and Arizona. The former vice president clinched a victory over one-time rival U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders in March as part of his overall march to the nomination. His win in a majority of Super Tuesday states, including Texas, helped revive his once struggling campaign. And the fact that everybody dropped out and aligned behind him, possibly by force, probably didn't hurt him either. To help defeat President Donald Trump in November, Biden said he's building a... That wasn't in Biden voice. Why did I do that in Biden voice? He said he's building a diverse coalition made up of Hispanic and black voters, despite recent questions about the Biden campaign's Latino outreach. He said Sunday, "There's no question Latino communities are important to this state and this country. You're now a major reason for our economic growth. You're the major reason why Texas is now a swing state," Biden said. I would be very surprised if Texas is a swing state, but of course we have all of Hollywood coming out there saying, well, donate $38 to get Texas's 38 electoral votes. And that's what they're trying to do. Well, just get those $38, get those electoral votes. And I don't see Texas turning blue at any point in the near future. I really don't. Maybe in the far future because there's going to be more bleed coming out of California, but I don't see it turning blue at any point anywhere in the near future. So, and to be completely honest, I don't think that any of these donations, considering the fact that none of them are going to any meaningful, well-known PAC at this point, and that's how the Democratic Party operates, is to go by well-known PACs. But considering the fact that none of these donations are going to a meaningful, well-known PAC at this point, I don't think that they're taking this money to turn Texas blue and do on-the-ground anything at this point. I think they're taking this money and pocketing it and putting it into some politician's fourth home. I think that there's some bribes that need to get paid, and the DNC is out of money, is what I'm looking at for this. If I'm going to be completely fair and honest about this, I'm pretty sure that's what's going to be. But, I mean, there's a long way till November, and we've got more emergencies coming up. So I've got one out of the local Fox affiliate here. Remnants of Tropical Storm Cristobal will likely give Wisconsin flood concerns next week. As Tropical Storm Cristobal continues to evolve in the Gulf of Mexico, long-term models continue to favor a track into Wisconsin by Wednesday, June 10th. This storm is predicted to make landfall in Louisiana by Monday, June 8th, and once it does, it will dramatically weaken. As the remnants of Cristobal reach Wisconsin, it won't bring hurricane force winds or anything, but it will give us a chance for heavy rain and flooding. Sky Vision Plus keeps the heaviest of rain for the western part of the state, but this could easily track east and give Milwaukee plenty of rainfall, When forecasting out this far, future models are strongly dictated by upper level winds, and this will be the final determinant of whether or not all of Wisconsin sees this widespread heavy rain. Gosh, I hope not, because it'll flood my carnivorous plants and I'll come back to dead ones. If the storm plays out as models currently favor, we could be seeing major flood concerns along the Mississippi River with well over 3 to 4 inches of rainfall in some spots. This far out, this track will likely change, but this story is worth following as we go through the weekend. So, yeah, that's going to be the next one here, is now there's going to be a hurricane coming up in through Louisiana. Well, tropical storm at this point. I don't know if it's a hurricane or not. But we've got a tropical storm coming. As if 2020 was not bad enough for everything else, now we've got a tropical storm on top of everything else. So I am waiting to see what the writers have in store for the rest of this year, because it can't be anything good. But yeah, keep in mind that we've got a tropical storm. Keep prepared. Make sure that you check on your loved ones in Louisiana at this point, because this is going to track right up the Mississippi Valley. And I will be moving away from the Mississippi Valley for a few days after today. So keep an eye on that. One more here, and then we will do something that restores my faith in humanity, and we will get on out of here. And I'm going to read the names of people who chatted in today, too, because I don't... With the fact that I've got a sub in for a couple days during the week, I'm going to make sure that I get all the thanks in that I can, because I might lose some of these chats as we go along. All right, from CDL Life, founder and driver one of Werner to step down as executive chairman. This is from Ashley, with no last name, over on CDL Life. The founder of one of the nation's largest trucking companies is handing off his executive chairman duties. On June 4th, Werner Enterprises announced that the company's first truck driver and founder, C.L. Werner, has retired as executive chairman effective May 31st. All I ever wanted to do was drive a truck, said Werner. As the first driver of our company, I know firsthand that professional drivers are and have always been the backbone of our country. America is witnessing that now more than ever. I've been proud to have created such a company. But my intent was nothing more than being able to drive a truck, provide exceptional service, and meet good people. And hope I could convince the best of them to come and work for me, and it worked. There comes a moment when you know it's just time to move on. I'm in good health, and Werner has never been in a better position than it is today. So now is the time. I have the utmost confidence in Derek and his leadership team to continue to take Werner to the next level and beyond. Werner recommended Derek Leathers, the current Chief Executive Officer and President of Werner Enterprises, to be named as Chairman of the Board. Werner will continue to serve as Chairman of the Board of Directors through May of 2021. CL started Werner Enterprises with one truck back in '56. The company has grown into one of the largest truckload carriers in the country. The 2015 video below features CL Werner driving a semi, detailing how he founded the company. So there's a lot of concerns going on about this as well, and that is the fact that the CEO is allegedly, and this is not in the article, of course, very, very big name SJW type. I've never met the guy. I know a few people that drive for Werner, including one of them that we all know. I'm not going to name him, obviously, but yes, we know somebody. We know people that do drive for Werner. They're a big company, and I do hope they continue to grow and thrive under Derek. But from the writing on the wall, it doesn't appear that he is going to be one to carry this forward. Now, this may increase the demand for owner operating, which increases the small business and increases the chances that one of these owner operators do jump up and make the next Werner. I mean, that's how Werner started. This was almost the thing that restored my faith in humanity, just because of the fact that Werner started from nothing with one truck and he was able to build one of the largest companies in the country. But this is not going to be it. And I hope for the best for Werner. I hope that they are able to bounce back. I hope that Derek does not rule like an SJW, and that they continue to keep the lifeblood of this economy flowing, which is trucking and transporting goods from one person to the next. All right, that's going to be it for articles here. And the last thing that I do on Monday, the second to last thing to do on this day, is something that restores my faith in humanity. And it's going to be our country. This is a cop-out for me at this point. I always say our country, but just looking at some of the things that I'm going to be able to do right now that I wasn't able to do not that long ago. I planned on doing what I'm going to do today months ago. even into last year, I was planning on getting down to Orlando, getting on a boat, and escaping it all for a little while. But then COVID hit, and I didn't want to be on a plane or a boat for any length of time because they're just big incubators for things. And then COVID hit, and nobody was allowed to travel anymore either because there were curfews and lockdowns. You couldn't go anywhere. Nobody wanted to travel. You couldn't go to a restaurant for anything. All this other stuff that happened along with COVID and everything else that went along with it. And now everything's opening back up, and even in spite of riots, I'm still going to be going down and swinging by DC on my way down to Florida at this point. I'm still going to get to see some places that are hotspots for all the violence. Places I've never seen before, but are still hotspots. And that's because our country, in spite of our differences, does have a level of respect for each other. Yes, they can go out and protest what they want to protest, but they'll leave the majority of the country alone. I know that there was talk earlier on about the fact that they were going to spill out over into the suburbs because that would be what would spark real change instead of destroying another left-run city, but for the most part, they are protesting where the injustices happen, and that is in the left-run cities. I mean, Sean King even came out and said that it's time to start rethinking whether or not we continue to just vote for Democrats because they have a D next to their name and actually voting on the issues. Sean King urged people to rethink voting for Democrats. That in itself should restore everyone's faith in humanity, but I do have to wonder if it's a ruse at some point. But my faith in humanity is restored, and one of the last things I'm going to do today is read the name of everyone who's in the chat right now because, once again, with Friday being what it is, I don't know how that's going to happen. So we'll just come out and check it out. So it looks like we've got Ron Helton in here today. Thanks for stopping by. Sully Blue is in here. Thanks for coming by and checking us out. Jessica Green is in here. Make sure you check out Contemporary on Tuesday and Wednesday because it looks like Jessica is going to be hosting for us. I'm going to reach out to her and confirm that while I'm on the road today and give her the password and some pointer, so it will still be on this channel. So go and check that out. Let's see, who else is in here? Deva Cannabis 420. I do love that name, by the way. Welcome on in. Thanks for coming and checking us out. He's got the Kermit the Frog tea. Seawall is in here with the cringe. Let's see, what else do we have? I thought we have all bus. Your new name in here. I don't understand your comment, but I'm gonna go in and look at that a little bit later and see if I can figure that out. Let's see, who else? I do like seeing new names in here. I thought there was another one. Yeah, Muggle Master. I saw that earlier on in the show too. Yeah, thanks for coming and checking us out, Muggle Master. You're a new name, but welcome on in. Hope you have fun. Yamafego, John from the Generational Gap is in here. Welcome on in. Thanks for coming and checking this out. And it looks like the RRC was in here in the beginning too, dropping out some stickers. So thanks everybody who came in and chatted here. Thanks for bearing with us throughout the week. Thanks in advance for bearing with us throughout the week. I need this. There is not going to be Ed's World tonight because I was not able to find a host. So we will be back here next week with Ed's World. I'll figure out who's going to be my guest for there. But yeah, there are going to be some announcements coming on with that too. Once again, I'm not going to really announce that until I get back from vacation. But there are going to be some changes to that lineup as well. So keep paying attention to that. But thanks everybody else who came in and chatted. And for now, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.